Hey, welcome to Planet Hex. I'm Andrew Horn. On this episode, I'm going to talk about The Crow. The remake is out, starring Bill Skarsgård, and it's getting mixed reviews. I think officially it is a flop, and some of us saw that coming, I would imagine. Old fans of it have been kind of up in arms. Some people have embraced it entirely, but it is dividing fans somewhat. I haven't seen it myself yet, not all of it anyway, so I may give it a look, but I am a dyed-in-the-wool fan of the original, and so I thought I would take you on a little journey. So let's have a little chat about those previous movies in the Crow franchise that not everyone that will have taken to this new iteration will be aware of. So let's take a look, reassessing the franchise of The Crow. So the first one, of course, was a cultural phenomenon. It was an absolutely enormous, important movie when it came out, largely due to two factors. Of course, the tragic death of Brandon Lee during the making of it, and the direction of Alex Proyas, which was stunning. Absolutely phenomenal work. The fact that they were able to finish this movie after Brandon was killed on set, was injured on set and later died, is just phenomenal. So if you know the story of The Crow, it's a guy and his girlfriend are killed by criminals, and a crow brings Eric, played by Brandon Lee, Eric Draven, back to life with supernatural powers, in order to take revenge on those people and lay his soul to rest. So hence the resurrection and the superpowers that's talked about in the franchise. So this movie was a huge bomb of popularity. It was honestly, it can't be underestimated how big this film was when it came out, and what a cultural moment it was for a lot of people. Yeah, Brandon Lee had passed away, but the movie was finished by Alex Proyas with doubles, some early CGI work, reused footage, and like alternate takes and things. Some of it was footage flipped around. It's like if you look closely at the scene where Eric is putting on the Crow makeup, as far as I understand, that is his double, and in the mirror it's reused footage from earlier in the movie. It's very, very clever way to finish something. So do read up on how the movie was completed, because it is a really, really interesting story. But it was a film that really struck a chord with a lot of people. It really hit home with a lot of people in terms of the elements of loss and revenge, and of course the action aspect. It had an amazing soundtrack, and it was a perfect storm. And it was finished as a tribute to Brandon, and for years it's always been the only one that many people will see as the true Crow movie. Adapted from the James O'Barr comics, yes, the Brandon Lee movie did deviate from the James O'Barr comics because they kind of had to, with finishing it without Brandon. They had to use what they could, but I think it really captures the spirit of James O'Barr's comic. If you've not read that, check it out. It's really good, really grimy, violent indie comic, and I do hugely recommend that. But rewatching the original Crow now, it still has that power. Yes, the production is dated, and the performance from but the performances from people like Michael Wincott as Top Dollar. It's even got Tony Todd in there. It's got Ernie Hudson in it from Ghostbusters. It's still a great movie, and you still feel really passionate about Eric's battle through this to take revenge on these people, as he is justified in doing so. It's one of those movies where the ultra-violence is justified, because you hate the bad guys. You really hate the bad guys. Yeah, there's some grey area with the morality of it all, but it is a really quality action movie. And it stands as testament to Brandon Lee's performance that it has lasted for so long and still is loved to this day. I know it has its detractors now. I've seen a lot of those online lately with talk about the new Crow, but it is a masterpiece of genre cinema, cult cinema, rather low budget cinema, and just a great example of the grime that was possible with 90s action movies and 90s genre picks. It is a masterpiece, in my opinion. No matter how many times I watch it, I will never get tired of this film. So they're still there. victims, aren't we all? There's so many great lines in it, so many great moments that really resonated through the years. I'm absolutely admit I used to dress as the Crow when I had long hair. I've had the makeup on, I've had photos done like that. Loved the whole thing, loved the soundtrack, played the soundtrack to death. There's just something about the whole mystique and the tragedy of this movie that really has stuck with people for many years. So after the original movie, after The Crow itself was so massive, it was followed 2 years later by The Crow City of Angels, which starred Vincent Perez as a new Crow avatar called Ash Corvin, and it had Mia Kirshner, who went on to bigger things with like movies and TV shows like The L Word, she's playing an older version of Sarah from the original movie. So she was already aware of what the Crow could do and the Crow powers and so on. So this one follows Ash Corvin, played by Vincent Perez, taking revenge on a bunch of bad guys, including one played by Iggy Pop and one played by Thomas Jane, who would go on to play the Punisher. And then working his way up to their crime lord boss, Judah Earl, who had sights on the Crow's powers and being able to take those powers on. Now, I liked this movie when it came out, not as much as the original, but I did see it at the cinema when it came out, and I liked it. And the soundtrack, again, is excellent. However, this does not have the same power or impact of the Brandon Lee original. It just doesn't. Mainly because it has been butchered in the editing room by the Weinsteins, who they locked the director out of the editing room and they recut this movie. So there are scenes that are jumbled and not in the right order in the theatrical cut. So some of it doesn't make sense. If you check out the novelization of the movie, which is a straightforward adaptation of David Goyer's script, there's a lot more to it. And certain scenes, especially in the last half an hour of it, they play in a different order. So check that out if you are a Crow completist. Also, while I'm talking about the books, do check out the spin-off novels like Quoth the Crow and Clash by Night. I think Clash by Night would have made a great third movie. But what it did have going for it, what City of Angels had going for it, was they nailed the aesthetic. It had that kind of sickly, surreal aesthetic again, like the first one. But it was a retread of like the whole format of the first movie with Eric's Revenge, the look of Ash's character, the long hair, the duster jacket and things like that. It was basically the same thing. The addition of Sarah, an older Sarah, there's Mia Kirshner playing Sarah, that was really good. That works really well, and she had a nice arc in there, and it was a nice little link to the original movie. But it had some set pieces, but it was largely just the same thing again, and Judah Earl was not very well fleshed out as a bad guy. You just kind of assumed he was the bad guy. So, but it could have been much worse. As it stands, it's visually enjoyable. It's a good visual movie, but as a follow-up to The Crow, not great at all. So that would put the franchise on ice for a little while. So that was 1996. And eventually, it would continue with a TV movie. This is just a little aside. So The Crow Starway to Heaven was a TV series, and the initial pilot episode of it was a adaptation of the movie, but with like the first movie, but with like TV production values. So it starred Mark Dacascos, who's known from loads of like straight-to-video movies, straight-to-DVD movies as an action star. And it starred Mark Dacascos as Eric Draven. And it did some interesting things with it, but ultimately, due to the budgetary limitations of the TV show, it couldn't attain the same sort of grit or feeling of the movie. And the fact that a lot of it took place in daylight just destroyed the mystique around it. I did like some elements of it, like the makeup coming out when needed. When he was using his powers or when he was doing action scenes, I think that was really cool. But on the whole, it was not perfect, but it was watchable at the time, and that's what we had at the time. Now, before I get to the third Crow movie that was actually released, there was another one in development. Now, you can find the script of this online. It was written by Rob Zombie, of all people, and it was The Crow 2037. So this was never made, and I'm kind of glad about that. I've read the script to it. It's been online for years, so do look it up. And it concerned a kid who was killed and then grew up while dead with the crow powers and didn't realize he had the crow powers until he was an adult in 2037. So I didn't really get on with it, to be honest. I'm glad it wasn't made. Yeah, just look up the story of 2037. It's an interesting little aside. But what we did eventually get in 2000 was the third Crow movie, The Crow Salvation. Now, a lot of people are going to disagree here. I liked it. Again, it is a mess, but visually and some of the story elements work really well. I like it that this is the main character played by Eric Mabius. Is he Alex? He was called Alex. Was framed for a murder that he didn't commit, and it was the murder was of the sister of a character played by Kirsten Dunst. So it had some star power in it. This was 2000, and things were changing. We were starting to get things like X-Men and so on. So cult movies and genre pictures were starting to get a bit more attention. And this is the movie they went with instead of The Crow 2037. And it is largely, again, a retread of the Eric Draven story, albeit with a different spin, with clearing his name for after the murder. One element I do really love about Salvation is that the makeup isn't makeup, so the crow face is burnt into his face when he is electrocuted in the electric chair, and he pulls the mask off and it leaves all his face scarred. He pulls the scarred skin away and it leaves a new face with the crow makeup on it. I thought that was a cool touch, really macabre, really grisly, but as it plays, the revenge scenes are fun. The soundtrack is great. It's got like Stabbing Westward on it and People, if I remember rightly, but it does not hold together as a compelling Crow story. The mystery of who actually carried out the murder that Alex was framed for was never really cleared up properly. It was kind of ambiguous, and it just Fred Williamson, I think it was Fred Williamson was the villain in it, just did not present a compelling enough bad guy. But that said, there he is getting electrocuted. I didn't mind this. It was watchable. I was pleased there was another Crow movie. It has a really good trailer. If you check out the trailers, it's got a really quality trailer. But in recent years, this is coming for more and more hate. And, you know, I don't think it's entirely justified. It's very much of its time. It's very stylized. It is very much a 2000 movie, which with how it's shot, how it's presented, whereas the original was shot and presented in a very new, unique way. So this feels more like a movie rather than something that really drags you in. But I have a soft spot for it because I have a soft spot for all the Crow movies, really. That is, apart from this bag of shite. This is The Crow Wicked Prayer. So many of you may not have seen this. That's Eddie Furlong out of Terminator 2. You may not be familiar with this movie at all, and that's probably for the best. If you are a Crow fan, I would only watch this if you are a completist. I was delighted to see this come out back in 2005. So I'm a big Crow fan. I was working in a comic book store. I picked up all the Crow comics, like series like Flesh and Blood, which was great, and a bunch of stuff like that. I had the merchandise, the posters, and played the soundtrack all the time at the comic book store. Same with the City of Angels soundtracks, mainly because it had NY Loose on it, and I loved NY Loose at the time. But this came out with very little fanfare, which I was surprised about. You know, it's a Crow movie; it's quite a name franchise. And then I saw the movie, I rented it, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is atrocious!" It has straight-to-video written all over it. So it's got David Boreanaz in it as the villain, Angel from Buffy, and it's got Tara Reid, of all people, in the sort of villain sidekick role that was previously inhabited by people like Bai Ling in the original, which was way better. This is a mess. It is an unmitigated mess with a tiny budget. It feels thrown together. The script barely works. The cinematography is non-existent. It looks like everything was just shot static. It has no decent soundtrack. This was a mistake. There is nothing I can really say about this film that redeems it. And I know people take time to make these movies and effort goes into making these movies, but that is not one that I would recommend to diehard fans of the original. So yeah, the original was great. That was a classic. This one had Tara Reid in it. I mean, that photo alone of Tara Reid should tell you everything you know about how close this was to being a good Crow film. It wasn't. So, the Crow movies. The first is a classic. That is hard to argue that. It was made under really difficult circumstances, it was completed under difficult circumstances, but it had a lasting impact on popular culture. City of Angels, visually great, watchable, not a patch on the original. Salvation, misguided sequel, I think, but I like it, but I know a lot of people don't. Make your own mind up, I'm sure you can find it online to watch. Wicked Prayer, don't bother, honestly. I'm sorry to say that was not a good thing to do. So if you like the new one, the remake, do let me know. Let me know what you like about the remake, the reboot. I'm hearing very mixed things about it, good and bad. What I am hearing is that it's very slow and things don't really get going until about an hour in, which really puts me off. See, this one, the original with Brandon Lee, did not waste time getting underway and getting things going, and that kind of puts me off. My attention span is short enough as it is, but the last thing I want to be is bored during a Crow movie of all things. But we all have our different tastes. Taste is subjective. If you do go and see it and lay down your hard-earned money for it, see the remake, I do genuinely hope you enjoy it. But I do recommend checking out the ones that have gone before, apart from Wicked Prayer. Do check out the comic books, which is a Flesh and Blood series, and do check out the novels if you can find them. I don't know how much they're going for at the moment, but as I say, I do really recommend Clash by Night. I'm Andrew Horn. Normally I talk about a lot of VHS tapes and cult movies, and I'm going to start reassessing some other franchises as well. So thank you for joining me for this. If you like this sort of thing, please do like and subscribe. Until the next time, see you soon.